One of my most memorable attacking games of recent years is probably my win over Georgian Grandmaster Badur Jobava in Olympiad in Khanty-Mansiysk in the year 2010. This was actually one of the last tournaments which I played still under a very high rating, which I had 27.49 rating, and also before that Olympiad I won the tournament in Shanghai, so I was still in top shape. But probably that Olympiad was practically the last tournament I played on that high level. After that my strength started declining a little bit, so it's always nice to remember the times when you were still one of the best players in the world. And this was in penultimate round, so okay, I cannot say that this is one of my last great games, but nearly. So I played e4, Jobava went for the Caro-Kann, d4, d5. Recently I was asked by chess amateurs what to do against Caro-Kann. And then I said that I don't know what would be the right answer to chess lovers and chess amateurs about this, because we grandmasters nowadays prefer e5 maybe in 80% of occasions. Of course, the classical approach is to answer Caro-Kann with knight c3, but then the positions after taking the bishop e5 are so thoroughly investigated, and they are already quite simplified, that it's very difficult to find the room for the further creativity and further fighting for victory. Meanwhile, e5 immediately makes it clear that the game is going to be strategically very complicated and sometimes also tactically. So bishop f5 is a standard reaction to this. We get very close position, so knight f3, e6, bishop e2, knight e7, short castle. So now Jobava was played bishop g6. The point is that white, even though the position is closed, white would still like to change his knight for this bishop. So the standard plan is in this position is that if black plays knight d7, white goes knight h4, and let's say after bishop g6, white does not take immediately, although he can actually take here. He can already take on g6, play knight d2, and after knight f5 he has to be just in time with knight on f3 in order black queen not to come to h4. And this position from very old times is considered to be slightly better for white, and I don't think this evaluation has changed a lot in computer times. So here Jobava plays bishop g6 first. One can ask what's the difference? But the difference is this, that now I have no time to play knight h4, because now knight f5 comes, knight takes g6, pawn takes, and I don't have time for knight d2, because my pawn on d4 would be hanging. So I have to make some moves like c3, but then, as far as I remember, black plays c5, starts attacking center, and he's doing okay. So that's the cleverness of this bishop g6 move. So I'm playing knight bd2. Once again, now I want to play knight h4. And then Jobava plays knight f5, not allowing it. Here I played a very sharp continuation, which is g4. Well, I cannot say that I'm especially fond of this continuation now, but this applies mostly to some of my games when my opponents played knight h6, h3, and then they played c5. It's okay, it's too complicated to explain, but in fact g4 is the move that on one side I would like to make, on the other side it's too early to open up and too early to well, to open my king and to weaken my king's position. I think my recommendation to everybody would be to play positional in this structure, to play knight b3, stop c5 and just go for long strategical battle. But okay, g4 is not a mistake, of course. Badur played knight e7, so I went knight h4, c5, the fight for the center started, c3, knight bc6, and my pawn on d4 is hanging. So I play knight b3, and after c4 I'm going back to g2. Okay, this idea of losing to tempi is also quite known, because now black can no longer fight for the center, so the only trump that black has is his queen side play, but normally it's a little bit slow. So actually this position I already quite like for white. But I made a slight mistake after h5. Now I should have definitely just taken his bishop, take the pawn, but I don't know what I was afraid, probably some ghosts. Because after knight f4 I have strong move bishop g4. Well, it's not that black has no compensation with the pawn. In fact, computer evaluates this position as roughly equal after knight d3, knight f3. But as I am not a computer, I would say that white has better chances here. But okay, this is something I did not play. I played g5. So it's very funny that how often the case is in Caro-Kann and in chess in general. You might have very close position, but one date will open. Of course, some close positions never open, and then the games finish with boring draws, but not this one. So knight f5. Now if I take on g6, the knight is so good on f5 that, okay, that it's better to forget here about trying to get any advantage. Okay, I can still play knight f3, then b3, but it's equal. So that's why I played knight f3 first, bishop e7, and I played king h1. I don't know, now I'm almost criticizing myself for this king h1. On the other hand, probably there is nothing better. Okay, so king h1, b5, queen side play by Jobava, knight takes f5, bishop f5, knight h4. So the difference is, of course, now if black goes bishop g6, I will of course take it. And I will do something before knight comes to f5. Probably it will never come to f5. For example, queen c2, king f7, f4, and I'm already threatening some tactics even with f5. Even that. Or, also, this is interesting, with the idea rook g3, rook f3. Then the only problem is that black might try to get with his knight to f5, but still it loses many tempi. Okay, so that's why it was check, bishop h7, rook g1, b4, and I decided to change my knight for this bishop. Risky decision, but I thought it would work. So I took on h7, g6, and I took on b4. So now my idea is to start opening the queen side. And here, interesting that during the game I was very much afraid of this plan of knight e7 and keeping the c4 pawn protected. I thought that then black would come with his knight on f4 and get strategical advantage. I showed this position to the computer. Okay, let's put it this way. computer was almost laughing, because white just goes bishop f4, knight f5, rook c1, and takes off the protection from this pawn. So it's all about this pawn now. After black has to take, then white just has excellent possibilities in further play, probably just AB, just that simple. Okay, it's easy to say has excellent possibilities, but in fact the position is still extremely complicated, but okay, if we start analyzing it, we will not manage it in 20 minutes. Okay, you could probably guess that the position is very complicated, so I cannot give too many variations, so just like to show how I followed my general plan and mated black's king. So queen b6, bishop e3. I want to play b3. Jobava took the pawn on e5. Well, in almost all Caro-Kann positions, it's important to win central pawn, but not here. Here white has two bishops advantage, so it only opened my position and it gave me some more tempo. I played b3, c takes, a takes. Now opening the way for my rook as well. Knight d7. So now I realize that this pawn on b4 is also important. One day it can become even passed pawn. Oh, so I played b5. Rook takes h7, rook a6, queen b7. Probably my opponent still thought he has a better game because he's pawn up, and my bishops, they don't seem that active yet, but his king is bad. Still, to use it I have to now act extremely quickly. So I play queen c2, making threats on g6 and on e6. Okay, but also I have a positional threat of rook c6 and doubling on ca, doubling there. Now the decisive mistake by Jobava comes. He played knight b8, thinking that I would just have to go with my rook back. But I decided not to go back, so I played rook takes g6. Obviously knight takes e6 is impossible, I just take it and then play rook g8 check, win all the material that is on the position. So he must take my rook and rook takes e6. Now I am rook down, but again all my pieces are attacking, and this rook, I am this rook down, which is on a8, covered by knight on e7. With all this, it's a serious advantage. It's interesting that I checked the following part of the game with the computer and I realized that I was making all the best moves, except maybe in the very end. That's always nice to feel. So king d8, queen takes g6, threatening mate, queen f7. So I played bishop g5 check. And here, whatever happens, black had to accept a worse endgame. He had to play king c7, after which I would take the bishop, queen takes, rook takes. Of course, having rook and two bishops against rook and knight, two rooks and knight, plus two pawns, makes white's position better, clearly better. But, okay, knight d7, black is still trying to resist a little bit. So, this is the last critical moment of the game. Normally, if you have the choice to get mated or play a worse endgame, you should play the worse endgame, because at least in an endgame, even if you are worse, you have some practical chances. Meanwhile, if you get mated, you just get mated. So this was practical mistake of Jobava to play bishop takes g5, queen takes g5, king c8, queen takes d5, attacking the rook, rook g7, bishop c4. So, even in this very sharp position with rook down, I'm just improving the position of my pieces. So he played queen g8, okay, after that it's already rook c6, the game is really over. Well, one has to see why is it over after king b7. It's over, but why? Well, probably the easiest thing is just rook c5 check, and after taking bishop d5 check, king d8, bishop takes a8. So now, of course, black has a lost endgame with 3 pawns down. Okay, so after rook c6, knight takes c6, queen takes c6, king b8. The rest is easy, but maybe I was in a little time trouble, so I did not play the most precise moves. So queen d6 check, takes, and yeah, I went with my pawn to d5. He played h4, I gave this check, king b8, d6, rook c8, queen d5, threatening d7, h3, king g1. It's interesting that black rook on a8 didn't even come to the game, and this was all because of that mistake, knight b8, that allowed that sacrifice. Well, now, remembering that this game a little bit better, I have to say that before Jobava allowed this rook sacrifice, before he played knight b8, I was just thinking about strong positional compensation for the pawn and about strategical ideas. Tactics would only come as a help to those strategical ideas, but once he allowed me tactics, I used that fact. Okay, as I said, it's one of my favorite attacking games. Of course, it was not without errors. There were moments when both players could play better, but it was a very sharp game with a lot of imagination by both players.